Hey everybody, welcome back to Sounds Like a Drum, Cadence Independent Media Production. Today, we're talking about what it means when we talk about the right snare sound, or the wrong snare sound, or the correct snare sound. We're talking about the idea that people have rampantly on the internet and also in real life that certain genres, certain types of music demand a certain snare drum sound or cymbal sound or whatever, but we're going to start with snare drums. And this, to me, largely, I don't agree with. I think you can do, a wide variety of things in a wide variety of situations. But there are some reasons to make some choices that have happened organically in styles of music over the years that have led to why we have certain expectations about the sound of a snare drum in a certain style or in a certain tempo range, things like that. Now, when you're a person who does sessions or plays on other people's music a lot, you can run into situations where the thing that you need to use in that song to really make it feel its best is not your favorite thing. And that's really at the crux of this scenario, because I remember as a younger player wanting to have my sound all the time, whatever that was at that time, and being kind of bullish and like maybe even pretentious about it a little bit, of thinking that like I knew better and like this is the right thing and I'm just going to do this. And in that you have options in a variety of, musical situations for the choices that you're going to make, we have to get away from the idea that we can just say, this is the sound, I'm going to use this sound all the time, and this is the right sound. Because there are infinite sounds. And there are lots of opportunities both to stretch the limits of a style or a situation, and also situations where you need to respect, like, this thing that you think is great is not the right thing today. Now, style, tempo, playing intensity can all dictate some of these things, but what we kind of wanted to do today was just demonstrate what it feels like to hear some extremes in a similar context. Not so much to say that one is like definitely right or definitely wrong, but to understand that this is going to change the experience of the listener, it's going to change the experience of the other players, and we kind of have to respect this. First up, we're going to go on the slower, lighter, more chilled out side. Now, when we go through this, I want you to listen for the space primarily, because at a slower tempo, there's a lot of air, there's a lot of room, and one of these sounds is going to take up a lot more space and be a lot more blended than the other. Now, there's plenty of slower music that has super high-pitched snare drums, but for me, I don't go for this sound when things are in this range. I'm thinking about respecting the space, I'm thinking about making larger notes, and I'm thinking about the idea that this is a musical choice. It's not about me wanting to show off a drum that I bought or a tuning that I like or something like that. This is about, we're making music together. We're trying to do a group effort here. We're trying to do art, basically. And so what that means to me is being open to these things and also understanding that sometimes an extreme one way or the other is the right thing, and sometimes it's just really not. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, when we get into high intensity hitting, we have less space. We are trying to make sure that everything we're playing is audible and clear. We can have the opposite thing happen. This kind of big warm sound that maybe I'm into right now is going to turn into a pile of mush at these other tempos. And we chose these extremes because they are extremes. Most tunings are not this far one way or the other in my experience, but just so you can see how this plays out, I'm going to do something that's a little faster, a little more dense, a little more intense, and just notice how it sits in the groove, not just what it inspires me to play or anything like that, but purely just the sound of it and how it's translating. Now, there are high-intensity, dense musics that use a big, pillowy, fat kind of snare sound. In my experience, if they are using that kind of sound, it's been dried out with different techniques of compression or different ways that they've had to modify the sound to get it to sit in the mix in a way that cuts through. There's less talk these days among drummers that I know about trying to cut through a mix. That feels like a little bit of a dated concept at this point. But in terms of presence and clarity in the drum, you're gonna want to make sure that you're putting into the music what it needs, and that if you are trying to project a lot more information out of the drum, tuning choices affect that. And you do have to pay attention to how that's speaking through that particular music. One of the biggest words in the music industry at large is versatility. That is a word that players bandy about, product companies, independent manufacturers, every aspect of this instrument. People talk about versatility. And if you look at ads, it's like a stack of ads, you'll be surprised at how versatile every product supposedly is. Stepping away from products and situations and just talking about sounds now, when I think about versatility of a sound, this is stepping away from the studio situation where we get to make these choices and really put them under a microscope, and into more maybe of a live situation where, for instance, you have to cover a lot of genres in one set, and you can't be swapping drums out, you can't be retuning on stage, you can't do those things. At most, you might be able to throw a wallet on the snare or something like that, or have two snare drums if you're really luxurious. This puts us in a situation where we can't really lean into extremes. We need to understand that we have to get to here, and we have to get to here. This drum will do this, and that means that we're going to get close enough. It might mean hitting really hard for the bright articulate sound, and it might mean putting a wallet on the snare for the fat warm sound, or switching to a broomstick or something like that. We're going to go through these again. We're going to use a mid-tuned drum with a lot of overtones. It's going to be wide open. It's going to be kind of wild, but it's as simple again as throwing a gel on it or throwing a wallet on it if you need to get rid of those. But the idea here is that it's taking up a little less space than the pillowy drum. It's taking up a little more space than the other one. Because there's no muffling on it, it has cut to it. It's going to get through because of the overtones. A lot of those are going to blend into the band. And with a little bit of manipulation of the drum and the technique, you can get close to both of those extremes if you're in a situation where you don't need those actual extremes. Now, as you can see, it doesn't sound like either of those other snares, but it's in the ballpark of being functional in both of those situations, especially if I spent a little bit of time tuning it to the room, if I was able to, mess with it at sound check, that kind of thing, or if I planned ahead and brought, some kind of small muffling thing for the ballads and things like that. And just as an aside, we used 3 snare drums today that are in structurally the same realm, but have some small components to them that steer them toward these kinds of sounds. The Acrolite is 8 lugs, aluminum. 8 lugs is very low tuning friendly. Aluminum is very low tuning friendly. 5x14 Supraphonic, shallow, great for high tunings. 10 lugs, also a little more room in the high end to tune, stays nicely tuned in the high end, has a little more crack to it. Chrome-Over-Brass, 6.5x14, very resonant, bigger sound overall, deeper, handles a wide variety of tunings, is a little bit louder than an Acrolite on the Acrolite's best day, is a little warmer than the shallower Supraphonic. These are all really close siblings. These are also choices that you can make if you know what sort of realm you're going to need to live in with that instrument in terms of its own versatility. Now, for another elephant in the room, maybe the largest one, we associate seminal drum sounds with seminal recordings and drummers, really important landmark things. I'm thinking about Bonham, I'm thinking about Stuart Copeland, I'm thinking about, new guys, like young guys even now. It's really, really important to understand that because it is a sound that you love, it doesn't make it the best sound for every situation, and it makes it the wrong sound for a lot of situations. And Bonham versus Copeland, perfect example. Like, time-wise, not that far apart. Like, almost some crossover temporarily with those two bands. People talk about Bonham's drum sound, as if it's one sound, which it's not. I mean, if you listen to the front of Zeppelin 4 and the end of Zeppelin 4, it's not the same sound. Black Dog and Levy are not the same sound. It's the same guy playing drums and sounding amazing, but they're not the same sound. They're close. They're similar. Same deal. If you listen to Police records, some of them are not as high as Don't Stand So Close to Me, and some of them are ridiculous. They don't even sound real. I can't roll in with a Supraphonic tuned into Stuart Copeland territory like we did today and just be like, this is my sound, deal with it. Similarly, I can't show up to a cocktail gig with 26, 14, 16, 18 and a giant Supra and giant beats or 2002s and be like, all right, guys, we're going to do, How High the Moon or whatever. Like, it's unacceptable, and you will get fired. I promise. Like, you can't do that. That's also why, like, every backline kit in this city, I swear, is either a 20 or a 22, 12, 16, and some snare drum that no one uses. It's because a lot of people are passing through, and if they show up and there's a Bonham kit there and they're trying to play brushes with a singer-songwriter playing a piano, it's not that it's going to be a bad sound, it's that it's going to be hard for them. It's going to be a challenging gig, and the idea of right and best is situational. I guess that's the crux of the thing. It's extremely situational. A little industry aside, also, there's a lot of marketing toward the idea of finding your sound, whether it's instruments, heads, sticks, cymbals, whatever. Finding your sound. I think that the intent behind that probably is to say, find a sound that you like and that you'll use. But I am concerned about the idea of people finding a sound and saying, this is my sound. There are players and musics in the world where it's reasonable to largely play with the same sound most of the time. It really depends on what kind of music you're making. But to get into a position of saying, I need to have my sound and it has to be this way, can only cripple your chances of being as versatile as you could be. And if only understanding what it feels like to play a pillowy snare drum in case you have to do that instead of having it be awful because you don't have the rebound of your piccolo that you're used to, or vice versa. For me, like, I don't play a really stiff sounding snare drum or feeling snare drum all the time, and it takes me a second to get used to it. These are all just more things for your playbook, for your skill set. Finding your sound that day, finding your sounds that you like, and then also knowing how to recreate them. It's half the reason why we started doing this here. All right. Thank you for watching. This was really fun, and boy, I talked a lot. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and click the notification bell below so that you hear about all of our new videos. There are a startling amount of them coming out right now, particularly over on the Patreon. We are still doing the normal Tuesday tutorials, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time every week. We also have a lot of interesting product spotlights, interesting snare spotlights, a lot of cymbal-oriented information popping up on the Patreon at various levels. Follow the link below, find out about all that stuff. It really is keeping us going right now, both monetarily and like soul motivation-wise. The conversation is really keeping us going, and we really talk about it all the time. The team here, which is me and Ben, we appreciate it a lot. And oh boy, this is gonna be a Pandora's box. Tell us what your sound is. Tell us if you have a couple. Tell us how you got there. And tell us if anybody you heard led you to this. I know I'm probably going to take some heat for this, but like I am curious about the idea of like having your sound and having that be a thing that you're fairly married to and that you want to bring to the table. Yeah. Whew, boy. All right. Buckle up.